Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's event. We're just going to wait another 1 minute or two before we start, as everyone logs into Zoom right at the time of the meeting. So hold on one moment, and we'll get started in just a minute. Okay, well, why don't we get started? So welcome to all to today's Local Development Forum seminar on social vouchers, which are considered innovative tools for social inclusion and local development. So really pleased to welcome you all here with us today in whatever time zone you're dialing in from. Just as a note, this meeting is being recorded so that others can have an opportunity to listen into the debate, even if they couldn't join us here today. My name is Karen McGuire, and I help head up a division that supports the OECD's Local Employment and Economic Development Program. And we're here celebrating our 40th anniversary next year to provide really practical policy guidance on a wide range of issues that support local economic development, and in particular also that have a link with employment issues. And so this event is part of our Local Development Forum that is open to practitioners around the world to really get the latest OECD findings and to ask questions directly from those who are active in implementing different policies. So today we're here to launch the OECD report of the same name, Social Vouchers, Innovative Tools for Social Inclusion and Local Development. And we're also here to learn directly from a number of panelists on exactly how these social vouchers are being implemented in countries around the world. Both as a tool and a long-standing tool in many countries, but also that have been even accelerated with the pandemic and different needs in order to reach different target populations. So we're talking from food and meal vouchers all the way up to different other forms of tourism, culture, just helping to regenerate shopping on main streets in local towns. And there's lots of interesting features of social vouchers that we'll hear about in a minute, but I think it's a tool that a lot of countries and cities as well are interested in, not only continuing, but implementing new forms as we go forward. So today's session will first have a presentation of this new OECD report by Amal Chevreux. And then it will be followed by a distinguished panel, a very high-level panel. So I'd like to first thank all of those panelists for joining us here today. So we'll have via video of Frédéric Lardet of France. And Frédéric was not able to join us here today, but she is here as a member of parliament and a deputy mayor of Annecy and president of the Communauté d'agglomération du Grand Annecy here in France. We also have joining with us today in our distinguished panel, Rudy Delarue. Rudy is president of the National Council for Labor in Belgium. We also have with us today Antonio Neto of Brazil, and he is the chair of the CSB, the Central dos Sindicatos Brasileiros in Brazil. We have Vít Jacek, who is executive director of the Union of Employers Associations of the Czech Republic. And last but not least, Florin Ianu, who is president of the National Council for SMEs in Romania and has also held a number of high-level political positions in the country. So we look forward to this panel discussion after a first presentation of the report. I also want to thank the SVIA, the Social Vouchers International Association, for their support for this work. And I wanted to also just highlight to all of those who are listening that you may simply, as you're listening to the presentation and the panel, put any questions you have in the question and answer function in Zoom, and then we'll get to those during the discussion. So without further ado, let me pass the floor to Amal for a presentation of this new report that was just released here at the OECD.
Thank you very much, Karen. So we'll move on to the presentation. James, can you put on the presentation on the screen, please? Bear with us.
Very sorry, just 1 second.
This is the advantages of our, new technical world here, where everybody has to struggle to find the right button at the right time. So, any event, here we go.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really pleased and happy to be with you today to present the main findings of this paper that's been launched today. And I will present just a few highlights, because I think that in the panel discussion, we will get into the country examples and also the best practices that we will share with the participants today. So next slide, please. So first of all, why this paper on social vouchers? We wanted to better understand the what social vouchers are, and more particular, their contribution to social inclusion and local development. And this is why when we were offered the opportunity to work and to analyze social vouchers, we wanted to analyze more their typology and type of use, the challenges and opportunities of using social vouchers. Of course, the paper offers recommendations, and we have also 7 country profiles. The countries covered by this report are Belgium, Brazil, the Czech Republic, France, Mexico, Morocco, and Romania. Next slide, please. So, as a lot of you know, the social vouchers have gained momentum in many OECD and non-OECD countries as tools that offer innovative solutions for achieving many objectives, social, economic, and even environmental goals, as we will see in the panel discussion and during the presentation. Over the last 70 years, social vouchers have been developed in more than 40 countries, including 19 EU member states, for use by an estimated 80 million people worldwide. And this estimation is calculated by the Social Vouchers International Association. So before, as you can see, we didn't want to give you the whole range of 40 countries that use these vouchers, but just to give you a couple of them. Today we have Brazil with us, and we will hear from President Neto about the Workers' Food Program, which is a strategic priority in Brazil. And for instance, just to give you an example, this program is used by more than 22 million people, basically, and it's focused on food and meal vouchers. Another example is Belgium that will be presented today. In Belgium, for instance, we have 6 main categories of vouchers: food and meal, environmental, and that's very unique innovation, personal and household services, culture, social support, sports, leisure, and gift vouchers. And you can find food and meal and gift vouchers in many countries, such as Romania, the Czech Republic, and other places, and Morocco, for instance. France also has a long tradition of vouchers developed by firms and public authorities to serve many purposes. And the main categories being the food and meal voucher, the titre restaurant, which is the most emblematic one, and personal and household services, and of course, a lot of other innovations with culture vouchers. Romania, and as we will hear from Florent Gianu, has also a unique social voucher system with a law that was passed in 2018, and that covers a whole wide range of vouchers. from meal up to nursery, up to holiday vouchers, and so on. Next slide, please. So basically, there are three types of vouchers that we have encountered during the study. Vouchers can be classified, as I said, under three types: worker-related vouchers, public service vouchers, and development local vouchers. These three types of vouchers may serve three different types of objectives, but they're not mutually exclusive, because some types of vouchers may directly or indirectly support multiple objectives, such as, for instance, local development or social inclusion. So basically, worker-related vouchers are provided by public or private employers to offer benefits for workers, such as food and meal vouchers. Public service vouchers are granted by authorities, national, regional, or local authorities, to specific groups of beneficiaries, such as the unemployed, people with disabilities, etc., to enhance social inclusion and support the implementation of social policies. Local development vouchers are used by national and local authorities and are primarily focused on economic objectives such as local consumption, behavioral change in support of the green transition, boosting productivity in SMEs, social innovation, and other place-based goals. And there are few common types of vouchers that we come across in many countries, including in some of the target countries, namely food and meal, personal and household services, culture vouchers, tourism, etc. Next slide, please. The main objective of vouchers is targeted spending through social, to support specific groups, sectors, or firms. So the economic rationale behind voucher programs largely reflects their ability to drive consumption towards specific goods or services or specific markets, and in doing so, indirectly increasing the purchasing power of voucher users. And public and private actors share the common goal of using vouchers to reach economic and social objectives. And I have to say also that the social economy plays an active role in social vouchers, and most evaluation of voucher programs signal their positive impacts and capacity to deliver a wide range of social and environmental objectives. Next slide, please. The uniqueness of social vouchers is also that they depend on collaborative relationships between authorities, firms, social economy organizations, and voucher issuers. So this is why operating social vouchers depend a lot on this cooperative relationship, and it can be materialized through different forms, as we will see, either through specific missions or specific modalities of consultations. Next slide, please. Now, social vouchers have been found to have numerous benefits, and they have gained, as I said, even more ground since the COVID-19 outbreak because of their extensive use by national and local governments to channel essential support to disadvantaged groups such as the homeless or the elderly, or to reach firms and sectors that were particularly hard hit by the crisis, such as the tourism sector. So why social vouchers matter? Well, they can increase, for instance, well-being of users, and targeting appears to be essential in driving well-being outcomes. So for example, meal vouchers have been shown to improve working atmosphere and enhancing well-being at work. They nudge consumer or firm behavior. So for instance, in Belgium, the eco voucher was created to nudge consumer behavior towards more ecological products. And eco vouchers can be used to purchase products or services with a low or positive environmental footprint. So for instance, based on impact studies for the eco voucher, for each 10 euro increase in eco voucher value, the likelihood of purchasing an ecological product increases by 3%. So for instance, if consumers receive 150 euros in eco vouchers, the likelihood of purchasing environmentally friendly products increases by 45%. They can also increase social inclusion. So for instance, in Romania, daycare vouchers are a public service voucher provided by the state to families with income less than 60 euros per month, and they help enroll their children in daycare facilities. So this has benefits for children's development, but also provides for greater household income and gender equality by offering women more opportunities to work. They also, of course, boost local economies, and one of the vouchers that are used for reaching this objective is tourism vouchers, which are the most well-known local development vouchers. They contribute to boosting local economies with the corresponding job creation in the hospitality sector. They also help reducing undeclared work, and vouchers are used as an incentive to formalize labor contracts, especially in sectors such as personal and household services. And of course, these personal and household service vouchers were developed in many countries such as France or Belgium, for instance. And finally, they can also support more tax collection by directing additional consumption to the formal economy. Vouchers contribute to collecting taxes. So more consumption in the formal economy means higher added value tax revenue throughout the production and distribution chain, as well as an increase in the taxable amount for income tax across all industries and business sector. Next slide, please. So social vouchers need, for them to work best, they need clear institutional, regulatory, and fiscal framework. So in most countries, we have observed that there is some sort of a legislation or regulatory framework that defines the scope and objectives and clarifies the roles and obligations of the stakeholders involved in the social voucher system. I can, for instance, give you the example of the law of 2018 in Romania, but I think Florent Gianu in the panel discussion will even talk a little bit more about that. A tax exemption is very essential to social voucher systems, and they usually are exempt from health and other social contributions and frequently from income tax to a given limit. They also need a network of providers that could supply sufficiently earmarked goods and services. And last but not least, they're usually monitored and oversight by specific bodies, such as, for instance, la Commission Nationale des Titres Restaurants in France. I'm just in my last slide. So what can we do to give further momentum to social voucher systems? The use of social vouchers could gain more momentum to be fully exploited if policymakers can use a couple of levers. First of all, encourage digitalization. Digitalization can accelerate uptake of vouchers because with digitalizations, there are simplified procedures that help the expansion of social vouchers. In most countries, for instance, assessed in this paper, Brazil, Belgium, the Czech Republic, France, and Romania, and beyond, social vouchers have transitioned from from paper to cards, mobile phones, apps, and other electronic solutions. And this has enabled the development of newly highly adaptable earmark mechanisms. For example, in Belgium and Brazil, full digitalization has been achieved for full food and meal vouchers and is due to be finalized in 2021 for eco-vouchers in Belgium, for instance. In Romania and France, there is agreement on the necessity to significantly expand digitalization of vouchers, and digitalization, of course, can support monitoring and evaluation of vouchers. The second most important element is to clarify the institutional and fiscal frameworks behind social vouchers. This may entail clarifying the institutional and fiscal frameworks used to implement each social voucher and how they are leveraged to achieve specific policy goals, social inclusion, as we saw, boosting social economy or nudging consumer behavior, including employee satisfaction, especially in times of crisis. Of course, governments and policy makers could also encourage more impact assessment. And for that, the systems have to be regularly reviewed, and social vouchers have to be fit for purpose. to evaluate, and this depends, of course, on the evaluation of their impact and on the specific needs they are supposed to respond to. And finally, raising awareness about how social vouchers contribute to local economic and development, well-being, and social impact is quite important, because a lot of people know about social vouchers, but they don't know how they can be leveraged and used. Last slide, please. So thank you very much for your attention, and please do not hesitate to check out the report. And I hope and I wish you a very good and exciting and a dynamic panel discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amal. And I think, one of the points also to highlight is just that while some of these voucher programs have been in existence for a long time, the pandemic has also really accelerated some of the creation of new programs. I see a lot of people are joining in on the chat, so that's great. People coming in from Turkey, Tunisia, Romania, the UK. So great to see everybody. Colombia, Portugal, Italy. So great to see everybody here. As we are listening to our panelists, don't hesitate again to put in the question and answer function if you have any questions, and if you can just put the @ in the individual's name if they're targeted to any individual. Or if you have a question for Amal, who just made a presentation, don't hesitate. So I think now, without further ado, we'll start the panel discussion. Now, our first panelist unfortunately couldn't join us here today, but has been very active in promoting a new form of voucher associated with teleworking. So I'm going to ask that we start the panel discussion with a video message from Frédéric Lardet from here in France. So we'll start that video first.
Ladies and gentlemen, as member of the French Parliament for Haute-Savoie, President of Anti-Agglomeration, I am honored to speak to you today about social vouchers, a subject close to my heart. I would like to thank the OECD for this invitation, and especially for the work accomplished in preparing the report on the social, economic, and territorial impact of the different social vouchers. A report which should be a source of inspiration for all. It's a fact, social vouchers contribute to the economic development of both territories and companies, but even more to the purchasing power of employees. The restaurant voucher is a good example, existing in France for many years now. It has established itself in the French social and economic landscape with precise objectives: increase in purchasing power for employee catering, development for a sector which plays a central role in our economy, cafes, hotels, and restaurants, which are an economy that cannot be decentralized. This social policy tool, which is supervised by the state but freely negotiated by the social partners, is a vector of attractiveness and fidelity for companies. It is a mechanism whose virtuous nature has been proven over time and which has imposed itself as a tool for recovery in the present sanitary crisis. I would like to remind you that one of the French government's flagship measures to revitalize local food consumption was to increase the daily cap of the use of restaurants voucher to 38 euros during the sanitary crisis. Our restaurants in France, which suffered repeated closures, have been partly saved by this flagship measure. As we have seen, the sanitary crisis we are undergoing is still impacting our companies and their employees in their work habits and their travel and consumption behavior. Among these transformations that have taken place during this period, the flexibility of work, which has resulted in the massive introduction of teleworking, is undoubtedly the most important. We can already see that this transformation, boosted by the sanitary crisis, seems to want to anchor itself deeply to become a basic trend. This is why, to respond to this change and acceleration of the need for telework, I recently tabled a bill to create a telework voucher. Inspired by the restaurant and mobility vouchers, this text proposes the implementation of a system allowing employers to cover the cost generated by their employees' teleworking. This would take the form of a flat rate annual allowance of €600 tax-free, known as a telework subsidy. The employee could then pay for expenses incurred at home in the framework of telework, as already proposed by French law, but at the same time in telecenter facilities. During the massive deployment of telework, many difficulties were identified. Among them, the feeling of loneliness, but also the inequity that telework can create. Let me explain. Not all employees have suitable accommodation for their work and have to cope with poor internet connection and limited space. Others have to adapt to daily noise pollution that can affect concentration, or to furniture often not adapted, or equipment that is inadequate. Access to a quality office has finally become an issue of social justice, public health and economic performance. The system I'm proposing will make it possible to benefit from a quality workspace at home, but above all, when conditions do not allow it, to go to a third place adapted to the exercise of one's work in the immediate vicinity of one's home. In this way, we are preserving the quality of life at work by reducing daily commuting for everyone. This is also a response to our carbon neutrality challenges. As we have seen with the yellow vest crisis, the distance between home and work has continued to increase and is becoming more and more difficult to cope with. For employees, working in a space close to home significantly improves work-life balance while providing a work environment equivalent to that of the office and combating social isolation, and even better, reducing their carbon footprint. According to Adam, 2 days of teleworking per week would result in a direct saving of more than 800 kilograms of CO2 per person per year. Finally, the GGET's work on telework has made it possible to measure the impact of telecenters on the territories. I will mention here the ones which caught my attention the most. Creation of more jobs in the local shops, increased consumption in trade and services, increased tax revenue for territories. Based on the many benefits brought about by the development of third places, the introduction of the telework voucher would facilitate their access and their deployment in all territories. Here is a summary of all the reasons that led me to table this bill with around 40 of my colleagues in the French Parliament. I thank you and wish you excellent discussion to help transform our model of society. Bye.
Great. So we thank Frederique, even though she couldn't be with us physically today, for having recorded that message and raised really a lot of important points about pandemic recovery, about worker rights, worker well-being, local development, really a wide-ranging set of issues addressed by some of these different vouchers. So I'm going to turn now, speaking of long-standing programs, to President Neto from CSP in Brazil. The Workers' Food Program, the Workers' Food Program, the PAT, has been a long-standing program. Could you tell us a little bit about how this really works and a little bit your reflections on its different successes?
Yeah, I will share something to you. I have some ever I can see. Okay. First of all, I would like to. It's a big honor to me to speak here in the OCT. We have this program from 1976. We have this program for 45 years old. It's very important. Can you imagine in this moment, we face a very difficult moment in Brazil. We have 120 million of people in nutritional, say, insecurity. We have 30 million of hungers in Brazil. 13% of population is unemployed now. 10% of annual inflation in this moment in Brazil. You have a decade with average growth of 0%. It's a very difficult moment. This program is very important. It works like this. I will show you. The basic concept, we feed the work produce more and better because it's a combination with government, companies, and worker. We have as you can see, self-managed companies self-implement this one. They assume the program with combined with the workers. Third-party services. We have a meal supplied by specialized companies, kitchens and common administration, prepare meal delivered, meal food and provision under an agreement. The company provides legitimation documents, vouchers, tickets, coupons for use in restaurants, in bars, everywhere we serve the meals.
Antonio, just a quick question. Have you gone to the next slide yet, or are you still on the cover slide? Just because we only see the cover slide right now.
This one?
We only see the first one. Is that the right slide we should be looking at?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so you'll let us know when you go to the next slide. Okay.
Next one. Can I continue that? Or are you talking about this one?
No, we just wanted to make sure that if you were moving the slides, we could see it. But if you're still on the first slide, then we're fine. It was just colleagues wanted to make sure that if you were moving, that it moved with you. So as long as you're still on the first slide, we're good.
Okay, I will try. Other things we can food in tours. It's another one. We have a very good experience in this because Brazil have a very difficult deficiency of proteic caloric ingestion. This is the percent. In 1976, 46.1% of the population wasn't fed. Can you imagine? We implement this in the building construction, adjust a breakfast, a single breakfast, and we reduce in 35% of accident in the works. This is very important for us. If you try better 20% of calories for the people, you need to 70% income to the works. This is our current focus, quantity for the quality of the meals. What is strategy action we have in the short and average statement? Reduction of food price and the nutrition social programs. This is very important to us in Brazil in this moment in special. In long state period, we measure the promote to increase and the redistribute the income. We need to try to redistribution this one. What benefit for the work? He participated this in his formal work. He pay only 20% of cost of foods. The government contributes with fiscal tax. They reduce. A company join the program and feed your workers and better for increase the productions, increase the productivities. This is good. Here in Brazil, we have a fast industrialization, high urbanization, high industrial concentration, long trip to work, maybe 3 hours from the house of work to the company. great consuming in this transport, low purchasing power for the work, inadequate alimentary habits, insufficient free time for feeding. What is the work's neutral state? Protein calorie deficient, inadequate standards of feeding. This is the, the context is very competitive. What is necessary for the country more competitive? Better qualified human capital, nutrition, health, academic graduation, citizenship. This is cost by price, quality, technology, and productivity. This is what is the vouchers. As Amal show us the virtual circle, okay? The energy with the alimentation. The Works Food Program in Brazil, 45 years of contribution to Brazilian development. They see this 22.8 million workers in more than 220 companies use this. In case Brazil studies show that one hill of fiscal incentive with the work from pay patch, the government collect 15 reals. This increase the activity in food production. The reduction of the number of workers accidents also has a relevant relationship with an implementation, according to Professor José Afonso Mazeu from FIA, it's a University of Brazil. Between 1977 to 2014, the productivity of Brazilian workforce grew approximately 56%, around 1.2 per year. Sorry. It's my bad English, it's terrible for me. But you use this for, in Brazil, is different of the other countries in the world. Maybe the north of planets, they need more houses of alimentation. But in Brazil, we can live anywhere, but we need to have a food. We need to have alimentation. These programs cover this. This is our contribution for this moment. It's necessary to increment this. We still are very short participation of this, the amounts of necessary to cover this. This is a very difficult moment in Brazil because we have many unemployed. These programs cover just for employment people who have a contract with the companies, because companies that manage these programs. Well, this is the moment in Brazil. This is the program, a very successful program, and we start to grow to put in the hands of the work a voucher in order to have a meals, or in company to have a meal, because they need to feed every day. Okay? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Antonio. And we'll also be happy to share the PowerPoint if you'd like as well with colleagues as we post the video as well, so they can see all the great facts that you were mentioning. And thank you so much. And you really highlighted as well the longstanding nature of the program, but also the scale of the impact, which is particularly important and has been accelerated, I think, with the pandemic, given the situation that you've raised. So thank you so much for sharing that example. Why don't I turn now over to the Czech Republic and ask if Vít Jacek, who's Executive Director of the Union of Employers Associations there, if you could say a little bit about the range of vouchers that you see in the Czech Republic. And I think in particular, food and meal tend to be among the most commonly used, but let us know a little bit about your perspectives on the vouchers system there, and in particular, the most significantly represented within the Czech economy.
Okay. Hello, everybody. In the Czech Republic, Just to have to give you context, we have about 10 million inhabitants, people living here. We have about 4.5 million employees, and out of that, we have approximately 1.3 million employees that receive meal vouchers as means to have a decent lunch. Meal vouchers have a great history and many times have proven their effect to be healthy way of spending lunch for employees. So it's a very popular, in long term, it's the most popular employee benefit ever in the Czech Republic. We have currently some issues here because the government introduced last year so-called lump sum, which basically means that instead of meal vouchers, employer can give employees a certain amount in cash, like addition to the, or replace a part of the salary with this lump sum. So it's like the government says it gives people more choice, but we as employers, and in that we are in union with employee representatives, they're against it, because we said, well, vouchers in principle are targeted, are motivational. If you have a voucher and it can be paper or electronic, you know, okay, it's something I should get lunch for. It's something that motivates me. And during my break around noon, I go out, I have a decent lunch, I have a little bit of time off. It's very good for my health, for social context at work. And as opposed to this cash lump sum, there's no motivation, it's just cash, you know, and there are always more important things I can buy for cash. I'm always too busy to go to lunch. So we don't see it very well here, and we hope the opinions will change. And also in the pandemic situation, we see here that restaurants are in a very bad economical situation, because their turnovers went down by 50% last year, and this year it seems again about 30 or 50% down. So they are in very bad condition. And one of the proposals you want to bring to the government, because we have a new government here at the moment, is for a certain period of time, let's say for 1 or 2 years, to introduce meal vouchers as usable in restaurants only. So because at the moment you can use them in the supermarkets to buy foods, to prepare your lunch, or you can use it in restaurants to have a like ready meal to eat. So you want to switch it, because we think it's very good for employees, it's very good for the restaurant, and it doesn't cost government anything basically, because the system is already running. So that's just from my perspective. Just in the context, we have also some other very popular benefits related to work-related benefits, because very popular are vouchers for holiday, vouchers for leisure time, fitness, culture, etc. But compared to meal vouchers, they are in minority. So meal vouchers are the top and the mostly welcomed in the population here.
Thank you so much, Vit. And then, I mean, I think you raised some important points about the sort of nudging factor associated with the vouchers, and what they sometimes help encourage us to do things that maybe we wouldn't do automatically, and we do that because it has other social benefits or economic benefits, as you mentioned, and you also highlighted, I think, a really important issue about a sector that's been hard hit in the recovery, and how that proposal you're making is really trying to address this sectoral element and in the recovery, in order to ensure that those jobs are also, and those businesses are preserved. I'm just going to now turn, when we're talking about these sort of nudging questions, if I could go now to Rudy Delarue, because Rudy, I know that Belgium has a number of different vouchers, and you can feel free to give a little bit in the range, but I know that one of the interesting and unique vouchers in the context that was raised in the study is one related to an eco-check, or a voucher for the purchase of ecologically friendly goods and services. So Rudy, tell us a little bit about the situation in Belgium with these different vouchers, and then in this special case that I think is relatively unique on an international scale.
Thank you, Karen. Indeed, we have a number of vouchers also well explained in your report, in the OECD report. I think for the world of work, there are two main vouchers, I think, that are relevant here. It's the food and meal voucher, which exists also in several other countries. But in Belgium, an employer, there is no compulsory, there's no obligation to provide them. But when you do that, you need a collective agreement or at least an individual agreement. And you have to also, you cannot discriminate between workers of the same category. For the, let's say, the most, let's say, innovative, we have the eco voucher, and I will come back to that in a second. And then we have, since also the recent Corona crisis, we have also the consumption voucher, which is, of course, important in a crisis situation. But of course, the conditions are very important because they are accepted to a maximum amount. And it is really to boost both purchasing power, but also local consumption. In the world of work, the EcoCheck is, I think, indeed the most innovative voucher in Belgium. It has been introduced after an agreement between the social partners in 2009, let's say, in the period of the financial crisis, 2008-2009. And it was a compromise in order both to increase purchasing power, of course, limited to an amount of a certain amount. In this case, it was 250 euros for each worker every year. And the objective is also to promote ecological objectives. So it has a double objective. So it was established by a collective agreement. The specific element is that the National Labour Council in Belgium is not just an advisory board to the government, but also to the parliament. But the most important one is that it can conclude, the social partners can conclude collective agreements, and the legal value of these collective agreements can be extended by royal decree so that it covers the entire private sector, both social profit and non-profit. And so if you make an analysis of Belgium on this eco voucher, you have also to include the collective agreement. It's a number 98. And this, of course, has to be seen in conjunction with additional legislation that provides the framework for exempting social security contributions. So in many countries, it's a kind of cooperation between authorities and in this case, the social partners or the private partners. As I said, that's another element. There is, we can say, an increasing use of these EcoChecks. I give you just some figures. There is an increasing number of workers that is covered by EcoChecks. Let's say 3 years ago, it was about 1 million, and now we are close to 2 million. So that's quite important. That's a double in a few years' time. The service providers or the retailers that are using it has also increased. In 2017-18, we had about 20,000 different ones, and now in 2020 we are close to 30,000. So that's also an important increase. And the volume now of annual issued volume is about 300 million. So that's also a steady increase. But another point is that, and that's the importance of updating, it's very important to update on a regular basis the list of products and services that can be paid by eco vouchers. The list is fixed by collective agreement. It's an annex of the collective agreement. And there is a commitment between social partners to update this list every 2 years. However, due to very recent important new developments, we have decided in the last collective agreement, which was concluded in July 21, a few months ago, to even increase this update and to have a midterm one at the end of this month, of this year, for 2 reasons. We have the new EU energy label that has an impact on a lot of devices, and it's not very clear yet what the real impact is on the availability of these devices in terms of pricing, because you cannot, with 250 euros, you cannot buy a top-of-the-art, most expensive television screen. I mean, that these cost too much for an amount of 250, even if you combine it over 2 years. So there has to be also accessible products that can be bought by workers and not necessarily the top-end products. So that's the reason why we are following this very closely. And a second element is the new evolution from farm to fork. It's a so-called short consumer chain, where we will probably include this in the upcoming revision, hopefully on, next month in this year. Another point that I wanted to highlight is the importance of the acceptance and wide partnerships. What does that mean? You need to involve the social partners, of course, but also the voucher issuing companies, because it's important that these vouchers are produced in a way and used in a consumer-friendly way, more and more digital, by the way. And more and more, you need also to involve the retailers and the service providers, because of course they have to accept them. So it's important that you have a wide outreach, and the acceptance is also important for the political authorities, because at the end they have to accept that there is an exemption from social security contributions. So it's important to have a wide partnership, and by doing so you need to be very transparent and clarify in case there are shortcomings. The last point I wanted to make is the digitalization. This is important to improve the user-friendliness, both for the worker and for the service provider or the retailer. And also to avoid that part of the EcoCheck saldo is lost. So when it's digital, it's much easier to avoid this. And so the social partners in Belgium have since many years, since 2015, stated unanimously that all the EcoCheck should be digitalized. And so now this will happen. There is a royal decree that by the end of the year, all new issuing checks should be digital, and there will be a transitional period for the paper versions that are still circulating during 2 years. So you can find more, of course, information on the website of the National Labour Council, which is Conseil National du Travail, Nationale Arbeidsraad, and I'm, of course, very willing to reply to questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Rudy. And I think a lot of key points here about also the updating and the appropriateness of the level relative to what the market is offering. And I think this issue of digitalization is also particularly important, and I think other colleagues might want to also jump in on that point as well, in terms of what that means and the benefits of maybe digitalizing more a lot of these vouchers. And I know I think somebody in the chat function had also mentioned the fact that they were using electronic cards, which I presume may be a similar type of system. So I'm going to turn to Florin Gianu, and just as a reminder, if you have questions, if you could put them in the question and answer box, it's a bit easier for moderation to be able to see the questions on the question and answer box instead of the chat function. And please feel free to indicate to whom you have a question, because I think there's a question in the chat as well for the Czech Republic. So we'll get to those in a moment. But first, Florin, I think you've got a lot of different examples in Romania of different types of vouchers, and it would be great to hear from you a little bit about the range of vouchers, but also some of the really interesting impacts it's had with particular sectors, formalization of enterprises, as well as some of the other social benefits. So great to have you with us, Florin, and to hear about the Romania story.
Thank you very much, Karen. I would like to thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And I would like to congratulate you and the team of OECD for drafting this report. I really believe in best practices and this type of reports. We are following closely other reports that OECD is issuing all the time around entrepreneurship, SMEs, or even youth. I have this experience of both being a former minister of entrepreneurship and tourism in Romania, and currently I'm the president of the National Council of SMEs, and I would like to tackle the issues from both sides because I have this experience. I would like to tell you from the beginning that I'm a big supporter of the voucher system, all type of vouchers, because their main added value is that they are targeted. Whenever you use money, is not in the control of the issuer. Either it's the state of the entrepreneurs, the employers, or so. With what will happen with the money afterwards. Whenever you issue a voucher, you know that it's a targeted thing. You know that it will benefit the right people out of it, and of course that the benefits is also in support of the society, of the entrepreneurs, of the SMEs. I will tell you a small story because I was the Minister of Tourism when we issued the first time this law of tourism vouchers, and we had a huge problem in Romania with the Romanian tourism, both for the local tourism agencies, hoteliers, and so on, and also with the Romanian traveling abroad. They were the first among the tourists in other countries. I will not name them, but we had a huge problem with tourism in Romania because the state and also the private companies, they paid in money this tourism. I don't know how to call it before the vouchers, incentives. Let's call them like this. And as I said, we had a huge problem with the local tourism, and we thought about drafting this law, and we saw the benefits after passing this piece of legislation, because the tourism grew with almost 2% in Romania. There were a number of new hotels that I don't know if they worked before under the let's so call it black market or not, but we saw that we had a plus of around 20,000 new hotels per year that appeared in Romania. And as I said, all of them benefit out of this policy. You mentioned before this best practice of the 2018 law that regulates the vouchers in Romania. This law is a law regulating the social vouchers, including food, holiday, leisure, and gift vouchers. And I would like to say some things about this law and the added value of this law, and having them all the vouchers under one specific law. So according to this law, employers can offer more than one type of voucher at the same time to the employees. They can be used only in Romania, thus helping the local economy, mainly the local SMEs, and only on that purposes for which they were issued. As I said, this was a problem not only with tourist vouchers, but with all the type of support, even for nursery or meal or so. Whenever you give money, as I said, you will not achieve the target the objective that you firstly thought about. The Ministry of Finance in Romania is overarching authority responsible for issuing each category of these social vouchers. It oversees the implementation and, of course, from time to time, it reviews periodically the indexation of their value, because they are related to the minimum wage, most of them. The ministry is also responsible for authorizing issuers who can be any legal entities established under the Romanian law or credit institutions established in Romania or in another EU member state. Here I would like to end my first intervention. I would like to say again that I am very happy that I see in your report that Romania is present with 4 different types of vouchers, with the food and meal vouchers, with the gift vouchers, holiday vouchers, and culture vouchers. And to tell you that myself and our organization will support further implementation of the voucher systems. We are interested in supporting now under the National Resilience and Recovery Plan for Romania, a form of digital vouchers for SMEs. I think that the social aspect of the voucher also can be seen for the micro companies and the small and medium enterprises, because they are also vulnerable recipients of the politics, and they can also be seen as a social implementation system. And in the future, in the near future, we are supporting these digital vouchers to support the digitalization of the SMEs, because we saw that only 3 out of 10 small and medium enterprises in Romania are digitalized. Thank you very much, and I will stay further with you for questions or remarks.
Great, thank you so much, Florin. Just a quick follow-up here before we move on again to the other questions. But you mentioned the issue of the challenge of digitalization in SMEs, but I think you've also gone digital with the vouchers themselves. And so our understanding is that actually sometimes by digitalizing the vouchers, you've actually also accelerated the digitalization of some of the service providers that then needed to become a sort of equipped in order to benefit from the consumption associated with the vouchers. So I don't know if you have any reflections on these sort of win-win associated with the digitalization of vouchers themselves as a tool to also help SMEs advance in their digitalization.
Thank you, Karen, for the question. Yeah, I was the supporter of the digitalization vouchers for many reasons. When we started, for example, with the tourist vouchers, in the beginning we started with reflecting on issuing on paper. And after 6 months, we saw that it was not a good start for these tourist vouchers. That's why we changed and we digitalized it immediately and fully. This type of vouchers now, from what I know, also the other vouchers are issued more digitally. There are a number of added value answer to what you mentioned. First of all, I believe very much in the value of the data, and whenever you issue something on digitalized, you have the right answer immediately. So you have a quick and very easy update to the status of this kind of policy. You can change it, you can upgrade it, and see the exact response of the society for this voucher system. Then you are more eco-friendly. You issue one time this type of digital vouchers. You don't issue and use paper and post office and every I don't know, every month, every whatever is the time you are issuing this type of vouchers and send them regularly on paper and this type of approach. Of course, there is a win-win situation with the recipient, that you can, let's say, help them into thinking in a more digitalized manner, and also for the acceptance companies, mainly, for example, in the rural areas where they're not so used in using the digitalization. And we saw from the perspective of Romania that, for example, there were being installed over 3,000 POS in the rural area due to this type of projects. And of course, one up-to-date answer might be also the COVID mobility restrictions and the COVID situation. That now it's difficult to move with the papers and so on. So digitalization process that came very fast in all the world, because Romania is not different than all the countries in the world. The digitalization process went on a speed action. If before the COVID crisis we discussed about the need of digitalization, now we don't have to discuss anymore about the digitalization process. And of course, the last question, the last answer to your question is that from the perspective of the public sector, of the ones giving the money on the vouchers, you can see that they were transparent use, and you can trace at any time the funds, the allocated funds. And of course, as I said, you have a very quick report, because I remember that when we discussed with the Minister of EU funds in Romania, the issuing of these hot meal vouchers, his first answer was, but okay, how we can trace millions of vouchers very quickly? And I answered him by issuing in a digital manner. That's the answer. And he immediately jumped in the idea, because he liked it. It was simple, it was effective, and as we see it now, it became a best practice. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. I don't know if Rudy, Vit, or Antonio, you want to come in again on this digitalization issue and what you've seen in terms of its benefits in your contexts?
Yes, if I may. Digitalization is very helpful to the system, and I see one important perspective, and that's the legalization of of the turnovers of the restaurants. It's an issue not too often spoken about, but it's true that in our country we know that in general, in any industry that you work with a lot of cash, it's seductive to use the cash somewhere aside. So it really helps, and the Czech people are very progressive in it, and especially with contactless cards now, with the Apple Watch or on the mobile phone, they are very quickly, they get used to using the phone. And because there were so many people using it, it kind of motivated the restaurants to adapt to the system too. So we see great progress there. So that's issue one, it's legalization of turnovers of business. And issue two is we had some problems here. It was not a big issue, but sometimes from the side of the government, it was mentioned often, is that some restaurants, instead of returning the paper vouchers back to the issuer and cashing the money, they went to the store next door and used it as a way of payment. So let's say a restaurant, instead of bringing vouchers back to the issuer, he went next door to the butcher or to the bakery store and bought some foods for the vouchers, which of course is not the way. So the digitalization always also solved this, because now you cannot do it. You cannot use it as a second way of payment in some parallel currency. You just have to use it the way it should be used. So I see these two good issues it brought.
Great, thanks, Fit. I don't know if Rudy or Antonio, you wanted to jump in on this one?
Yes, Brazil is the same like Czech Republic. We abolished the papers, now use cards, phones, apps, everything. How somebody said in the chat, digitalization is also about the digital inclusion. Everybody use this one. It's easy to use in bar, restaurants, supermarket, everywhere. We have the same.
Great. Anything else you wanted to add, Rudy, or?
Well, I think that digitalization in relation to payments is, of course, a horizontal issue of concern in the sense that it avoids, of course, undeclared economy. Yeah? It combats undeclared economy. That's, I think, we see in all countries in the world where digitalization is used to avoid, let's say, black market kind of things or undeclared work. For in Belgium, the issue of digitalization of the vouchers is more related to to promote a user-friendly system, because with all the different vouchers in your pocket, at the end you lose sight of it. You can forget about it, and then at the end of the year, when you clean up your house, you can find maybe 10 or 20 vouchers, and they're expired, you see, because there is a date on it. And that's an element of concern, because once they are expired, then of course the money is somewhere, and that money is not used by the worker anymore. So with digitalization, you can avoid this. It's more of a user-friendly way of organizing, let's say, this voucher system. But digitalization is also used in the issue of, for instance, restaurant and catering, especially restaurants and cafes, in order to avoid undeclared work and black economy. But that's not related to vouchers only.
You know, so a lot of benefits in terms of making sure that we don't lose out on some of the amounts because we didn't have the right balance and you couldn't calculate it with a piece of paper, that you were able to fully keep track and use it, that you reduce some of the black market or other illicit uses and trade of the vouchers, that you're able to also track from the public sector side a bit more what's happening real time. And I think also some of the lessons you've shown are that you can do this in areas and communities that might be more remote and more rural, but it still is an effective tool, and that you're able to make it work even when they necessarily not all of the typical infrastructure is in place, but you're certainly able to make these voucher systems work. So I think there are a number of questions that are coming up in the chat and in the question and answer section. So just a question that's really to all, and Amal, feel free to jump in as well, but there's a question about key recommendations on how to implement a successful voucher program that you would like to share. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on what you think have been particularly the most important lessons you've learned on how to do this right, or how not to do something in order for others to learn from that. So any tips and tricks that any of the panelists want to bring up?
Or maybe I can jump in and then, or maybe Vit, yes, go on. Go.
Okay.
Go, Vit.
You couldn't handle the silence, just as me.
No, you couldn't handle the silence. Just go on.
Of course, it depends if you want to introduce work-related vouchers or as a social care vouchers. What I see as important, because we have this experience that with the handicapped people, that many years ago, government wanted to provide money for the care they need, handicapped people. And we were saying, well, provide it in terms of vouchers, because if you give cash, it's not going to end in the system. Unfortunately, they introduced the cash and it goes outside of the system by 80%. So one important issue when to introduce, you need to have agreement of all social partners or all parties involved. That's a big issue, because if there is one party in this kind, it was a party representing handicapped people. They say, "Oh, we need freedom. We need freedom." And we said, well, you have freedom, but if the government gives you money, your freedom needs to be like limited by the form that it needs to be used, because then it goes outside the system, and the government needs to give more money because it's not used for the purpose. So that's one big issue if the government plans it. And really, this question of freedom is very frequently open here, that if you give somebody a voucher, you limit their freedom. But we always say, well, of course you limit the freedom, but the government gives a part of the money, at least even in the work-related vouchers, it gives some tax benefits. And as long as the government gives you some money, it needs to have control, and it has a right to limit the freedom. If you need freedom, just use the cash you made and you do whatever you want. But it's an issue because vouchers are part of the social policy of any government. And somebody says, well, people are reasonable and they will go to lunch every day and they will save money for the retirement and they will do this. No, they won't. And we have to face it because if you want to motivate people, you have to motivate my finances, but at the same time, you have to limit the space they are moving in. So it will be used for the purpose, because in long terms, then the government saves money for the healthcare. If you lunch well, the government saves money for the healthcare. If you use money for the retirement, it saves money for the public pension fund because people have their own money. And it's much cheaper for the government to give 20% to motivate people to save for their pension or to go to lunch, rather than give 100% of the expense to pay it all. So just few thoughts on that.
Does anyone else want to jump in on tips and tricks that you've seen in your countries that are very important to share with others?
If I may?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so what we saw from the voucher system, and we can use it as an idea, is that you have to have a specific objective and very targeted objective on the voucher systems. Either they are for meal, for gifts, so holidays, or whatever you name it. The second thing is that you should have a large target in order to achieve a large category of people in this particular sense, the social categories. The third one is that you have to think beforehand on the distribution chain. It is very important because when you target millions of recipients, of people, the distribution chain is the key. You cannot achieve millions of people so easily. So starting from the issuer to the regional authorities, to the local authorities, to the partners, like also our colleagues, the panelists mentioned, is the key to have a good and a best practice policy. Of course, coming from the employers organization, it is very important that you, as Vít, Rudy and Antonio also mentioned, it is the key to involve the social partners, because they are the ones related to your recipients, to the employees, or to the employers in this sense. And what I think it is very important is that you have continuity. If you issue a voucher system for 1 year or 2 years or so, this is not the best practice. It might help into solving a small problem at the moment, but it's not a best practice. That's why we fought in Romania that we have continuity on this system. We see the results, but if you don't have continuity, then the results will stop immediately. And we fought, for example, for this tourism voucher vouchers to have continuity. And I just had a discussion with the Ministry of Finance, and he said that for the next 2-3 years, this policy is included in the fiscal policy of our country.
May I just agree with those both. It's in Brazil is the same. You have to make some directions for the vouchers, because, as you know, if you have given money, you don't have a control. As Vit said, we have to, because it's more control used for the real motivation for the vouchers. This is what happened in Brazil. We have to make some control, because the enterprise use this in order to get incentive tax from the government. You have to control this one. This is necessary.
Yeah, I also agree with the speakers before on this. Social partners are key when it's related to the world of work. Otherwise, there is always the danger that for political reasons, as a minister or a party wants to implement something in the short run and has no sustainability. And you have also to take into account the protection of wages. I mean, that's an international convention of the ILO, an International Labour Organization. It's a so-called important priority convention. So the general principle is, of course, that the worker has the right to spend its salary in the way he wants. The origin of this convention, of course, goes back to shops that were controlled by the employer, and that the worker had to buy his food in the shops controlled by the employer. That's the historic the context of this. But so that means that targeted income elements should, of course, be well designed, limited in terms of the amount, and so on. For instance, one of the questions was, can you buy houses? Of course, that you cannot do. You cannot buy a Tesla or a house with a check. I mean, that's not the objective. I mean, that would be a parallel economy, and it would also undermine the freedom of workers to spend their salaries. But when it's well targeted and the objectives are very clear, and there is a consensus on this, then of course it's another context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to all of you on that question. I'm just looking at the time. We have a few more minutes on a range of questions here. And also just some comments about some importance, the success, for example, of vouchers for dentists for vulnerable families in Portugal has been highlighted in some of the comments and questions. A question about the privacy of the data collected in the process, because we've had a big issue and questions about the benefits and values of digitalization. And there was one of the questions was asking about how you address privacy issues and safety of data associated with these kind of voucher systems. And I'm curious if any of you have been confronted with that issue and how you've addressed that.
I would answer the first one. For us, the Europeans, it's very easy. We have the GDPR regulation, so we have to follow the regulation. So it's not a problem on this regulation. Every issuer, either if it's public or private, we have to follow the GDPR, and that's the simple answer.
It's the same in Brazil. Just follow the rules. No problem.
Yeah, you have to do it. That's I know it seems as a simple answer, but you just have to do it. Like in another business nowadays, if you have a bank card issuer, actually basically whatever you do nowadays, you have to deal with it. But it's not an issue. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's solvable and it's not difficult. So yeah, you just have to do it.
Okay, So I guess the successes in your countries are such that if you follow the rules, things appear to work well and people are able to benefit from the vouchers. And it's true that everything, even us in the OECD, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, we need your consent. So it's true that everything we do is really subject now to these data protection rules. I see that there's a couple of other questions and comments about how nudging might not be or they might go the wrong way or so I think some issues associated with how we set up these vouchers to ensure that those nudges don't go in a way that maybe is against people's best interests. So maybe being really careful in particular on that. And there was some, I guess, questions here also in particular about the case of Brazil, that you still need to make sure that people have access to, I guess, basic income and services in addition in order to make this all work. I see also that there are some issues about how maybe some of these vouchers can support female employment issues coming up in the questions and chats. And I think there's also been a couple of questions and chats, Vit, for you about the situation in the Czech Republic. So I think people are all interested in, I think, following what you mentioned in terms of this trend to go from vouchers maybe back to cash. And I see in the chats also that some colleagues have highlighted that there are some studies also about what happens when you give cash and what happens at the end of the month in terms of what you're able to buy for food. I don't know if Amal, you haven't had a chance to jump in yet. I don't know if you wanted to jump in on any of the questions you've heard out loud or seen in the chat and in the question function.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. I just wanted to highlight the fact that at the end of the day, as everyone said, the most important thing is to know what you want to target and who you want to target with the social vouchers, and of course to adapt the system on a consistent basis. We haven't spoken much about assessing the impacts of using social vouchers, and especially the social impact of social vouchers. We know that they create jobs directly or indirectly in communities. We know that they have helped also save jobs during the crisis and help people, full stop. But we really need, and this is one of the recommendations of the OECD report, is to encourage governments and local authorities to assess the impacts of using social vouchers, and more specifically the social impact. And we have a paper that came out on social impact measurement, so maybe not fit for all purposes, but I think there are elements that in that paper that could be interesting also for the social vouchers. The other point I wanted to highlight is that, of course, social vouchers are also, and relating to the question about women's employment, are also tools that are used a lot by social economy organizations. And of course, in the personal and household services, this is one of the most emblematic social vouchers that were used to formalize work, but more so the work of women who work in the service à la personne, as they call it in France, type of field. So yeah, I think we need to see also to study even more and analyze even more of these practices. And lastly, I really enjoyed doing this report, and it made me learn a lot about social vouchers in these different countries. We hope that Mexico and Morocco, who are covered by the report, would have participated, but they couldn't. So I'm really quite happy that we had this discussion today with examples and best practices, and hope that you all go and read this report and continue the discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Amal. And I think, one of your points about measuring impact, I think what also some of the panelists have highlighted here is just the multiple forms of impact they can have. And I see also one of the questions was, what are the impacts on job creation and the formalization of businesses and employees? And I think there's, evidence of that positive impact, which has then tax revenue implications, but all sorts of other positive benefits for people. And I think Amal's pointed out also that in some cases you might be spurring multiple impacts at the same time, a culture voucher that helps support a sector that's been hard hit, but also that improves people's well-being, that also has job creation impacts, et cetera. So I think this is, the first paper that we did specifically on the wide range of types of vouchers, but there's, I'm sure, a lot more that the OECD can do. And I know some have looked a bit more specific at certain forms of employment related in order to formalize work, but I think there's also a lot more that this topic merits debate and discussion. And I see from the chat and from the questions that it's a hot topic for different countries as they're thinking about how to best juggle between targeting and support and how social vouchers can help with that. So I just really want to thank again our panelists, a very high level set of panelists who've been able to join us here today and to contribute to this debate and share what their countries have been doing. And then just again, a huge thanks to SFIA as well in order to support this work. So I just want to close here and note that if there's an interest in doing more work on this topic, don't hesitate to contact my colleague Amal, and we can look at maybe future opportunities to address other specific fields within this area of social vouchers. So thank you all for joining us at this webinar today, and have a wonderful rest of the morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you're calling in from. So thanks again to all of our panelists.